So today we're really going to spend the time talking about termites. Let's forget about beetles and ants. This is just really what we have for today. So this is a nice example to show you what termites are and what they can do. This is a soldier cast. We're going to see that termites are social insects and they have individuals that have specific function into the colony. And you can see here the head capsule that is very hard, that allows the individual to defend the colony from predators and competitors. But the rest of the body, the cuticle, the skin is very, very thin, very fragile. And this is why they tend to be protected inside the wood where nothing can get to them, where just the head is sticking out to prevent anything from coming in. So as a general thing, termites in the world are actually extremely diverse. They're part of Blaturia, which means they're technically cockroaches that are really, really derived. They are nothing like the roach that you're going to see on your in your kitchen or bathroom. But these guys, they're so derived that they cannot change what a cockroach can do. There's about 3,000 species of termites across the world. A tiny fraction of them are tend to be pest species, and they all feed on some kind of lignin, so plant material as per se. They are incapable of digesting wood on their own. They rely on microbes inside their gut to do all the magic. And they are eusocial, which means they have this complex relationship where a few individuals are doing all the reproduction, the rest is sterile and doing all of the hard job to bring the food, digest it, sharing it, and taking care of the brood, right? And termite as a whole, we as a society look at them as a pest. This is a truly anthropocentric concept that termites are here to chew on my house. These are bad, right? But they tend to feed on things that we cultivate or build. So they're just chewing on something that they've been doing for literally 155 million years. So in perspective, they're just doing their thing. Some species happen to be at the wrong place. They tend to be invasive, but unfortunately, we are the one who brought them here. Not on purpose, but they're really good at associating themselves on movement of population across the globe. Of course, they're insects, creepy crawlies. Nobody really likes this. But among all of the insects that can be inside your house as household pests, termites have one unique trait. Is they're the only one that can really hit your bottom line. All your life investment in your house, your mortgage. That is really where it can hurt the most. But termites actually have a fundamental function in ecosystem across the tropics and part of the warm temperate area. They're key decomposers. They're part of the carbon cycle. Remove the termites from Amazonia, the whole system collapses. So it is important to keep this in mind. So some termites, actually 97% of all the species, are not pests and do their thing. That is beneficial for the environment. They contribute to soil enrichment. They can buffer drought by bringing water deep from the ground to bring it back up to vegetation to be luxurious. And more important, they're part of the food chains. Everything feeds on termites in the tropics. It's quite remarkable. This is why they evolved all these defensive traits to protect themselves, by the way. As social insect, termites are always compared to ants, right? In most civilizations, in many languages, ants are ants and termites are called the white ant because they behave like ants, they do societies like ants, and they do weird things like ants do. But in reality, they reach the same kind of complex society through evolutionary convergence, which means that ants are derived wasps to some extent, and each ant that you see on the pavement or on your kitchen countertop are technically adults. They had to go through metamorphosis, just like a butterfly come from the caterpillar, have to go through pupa and turn into that beautiful butterfly. Ants, wasps, and bees have to go through the same process where the young one, the juvenile, is a maggot, basically. It's a grub. For termites, it's not the case. It's going to be like grasshoppers, for example, where the baby grasshopper already looks like a grasshopper to some extent, but much younger, which means that the societies of termites are technically societies of juveniles. You're not going to have any adult because they're stuck in a young state of being until they die of old age as a young individual. I know it's paradoxical, but it's what makes termite kind of cool. Oh, and again, they are derived cockroaches. So they are kind of nested within the broader cockroach phylogeny, but they do their own thing. They don't look like cockroaches anymore because they just moved away from it. But one thing you have to keep in mind is termites are fundamentally a family unit. This is the more caring animals on Earth if you look at it that way. You have mom, which is the queen, which is a bigger individual at the center of a picture. You're going to have the king, which is the second largest individual, which is going to stay next to his queen. And then around, you're going to have here workers. And the workers are doing everything in the colony except for reproduction, where reproduction is the only thing that mom and dad do forever until they died of old age, which is about 20 to 30 years, depending on the species. Longest lived insect on Earth, by the way, which is, again, remarkable. But which means that in her lifetime, a queen can lay 1 trillion of eggs. So the colonies can be fairly small, depending on the species, or extremely large to maybe a few millions individual. So that size is really can be the source of a problem. Now, the termites are casts. And when we were talking about identification earlier, it is hard to identify termites because this is a single species and they all look different. So see, we have a king and queen that are in charge of reproduction. They lay the eggs that emerge into larvae. Again, it looks like a baby termites already, not a grub. They're incomplete development, we call that. They molt into workers, and some of them turn into soldiers. Workers find the food, digest it, take care of a brood, and do the foraging and everything. Soldiers are here just for defense, nothing else. And the larvae are just completely dependent on the workers. Ironically, the king and queen, after the initial colony development, are completely dependent on their workers. If you remove all the workers, everybody starved to death. That's as simple as this. Simple. So this is a pile of egg that I collected from one of the colony from my laboratory. And as they hatch, these are the first and second instar larvae. Aren't they cute, right? These are cute. Then they grow bigger and bigger by shedding their skin and grow a bigger one. And you're going to have some of them turn into workers and some of them into soldiers. Eventually, when the colony is big enough, they can invest in actual reproduction outside the colony. To do so, they invest in what we call the nymphs that grow wings and fly out of the colony. So because these guys have wings, often they're misidentified as ants, as flying ants, right? And unfortunately, they have these wings for about 20 minutes in their lives as they start flying, drop somewhere, find a mate, drop their wing, and hide forever. That's pretty much how it goes. So these individuals start with wings, but they only need it for dispersal away from mom and dad's family unit to make their own family unit somewhere else. Each colony is an independent unit, biological unit. So when you see one termite, it's one cell of one organism. You have to look at it that way. Eventually, as a male and a female find each other, they, as I said, drop their wings, they mate, the queen becomes this big egg-laying machine and pump eggs, and the mate is just here to provide his small contribution once or twice a day. So the life cycle of a colony is what is complicated and, again, brings a lot of confusion on what termites are and what they can do. As you have an elate, which is the winged termite, flying out from their parental colony to fly out, disperse, find a mate, and start a new colony, they're going to find each other, drop their wings, mate, lay eggs, and these eggs are going to hatch into larvae and molt into bigger and bigger individual. When I say big, they're still relatively small as a whole. And these workers are going to keep molting for the rest of their life until they die out of old age. And for the worker termite, they can live up to 3 to 4 years, which is quite remarkable, again, for an insect. A honeybee lives for about 25 days. See, in all perspective, termites are very long-lived, but they're stuck, protected in a piece of wood forever, so they don't get to fly and do cool things like bees do, right? Different strategy for success. Some individual can change into soldiers. They have exact same genes of their brother sisters, except that they basically can activate specific genes to basically turn it into a soldier during the next molt instead of continuing as a worker. This is a magic under the hood that I was talking about earlier, where it's all regulated through genetic material that is already in the system of all termites in the colony. As the colony gets big enough, and usually it takes about 4 to 5 years for the colony to reach enough critical mass and resources, so they can invest into that very expensive individual type of individuals, which are the nymphs. The nymphs are going to grow bigger, grow the wings, and when it's time, they're going to fly out and find a mate and complete the life cycle. That cycle can take 5 to 8 years. So it's a very, very long process. And by the time you see that termite flying from your tree or from your baseboard, that means they've been around for at least 5 to 8 years. You just noticed now. So there's a whole delay on the process, which because it's cryptic, it's hidden, there's no sense of urgency. And that has been the tragedy of this whole thing, is by the time we realize it, it's a bit too late, unfortunately. If a king and or queen die, they can produce a secondary reproductive, so you cannot kill the queen and king. It's not going to change a thing. The colony make a new one and keep on going. So the B movies or C movie at this point about bugs, you have to kill the queen. Not happening. It's just science fiction. Okay, so as I said, this life cycle is complicated. This is the exact same thing I just showed you, but I want to show what's important here. Is when you find termites or your pest control provider find termites, this is at 2 specific times. One is going to be during the dispersal flight, what we call the swarms. You know, when you see all these termites flying, when the sun goes down in March, this is when things are happening. These guys are from colonies that have been established for quite some time in the environment or in your house, by the fact that the workers and the soldiers are basically feeding all year long. So, but we never put them together because we always see them separately, but it's the same species. Sometimes it's the same colony. So when we say it's termite season, we're usually talking about the dispersal flight, swarming. We see they fly and then we don't see them for another year. And then next March, they come back, oh, it's termite season. And then we forget about it again. But the colonies keep chewing every single day, all year long, especially here in the tropics. There's no winter for them. They can keep on going, which makes their potential for damage quite problematic compared to some of the more northern species, because in winter, they go down and they stop. Not the case here. So who has experienced a nice dispersal flight, a swarm on their own, when, you know, it's about 6, 7 o'clock, you come back from work, you close your door from the car, and you look up and you see this massive cloud of insect coming out. And this is pretty much what it looks like. Let me see if I can show you that video that I took in 2016. So you get an appreciation of what termite flight looks like. So I did this video, Jesus, 8 years ago. My daughter wasn't born yet. Man, that drives me back. So what I do every year, and I've done this since 2013, I put my light trap. They are attracted to specific wavelength of light. And they also are attracted to trees, by the way. I'll talk about it in a bit. This is basically in March, whatever, 15 or so. In Fort Lauderdale, usually for you, it's going to be a week before that because it's a bit warmer. So early March all the way to mid-April, you're going to have these massive swarms coming up. Here I'm playing with it. And eventually, if you look inside, this is what I collect. And during good nights, I collect about 20,000 L8s in my light trap in my front yard. So if you think that I'm detached from the problem I'm studying, no, I'm living at ground zero at where all the termites are. And I experience termite damage in my own house. Talk to my wife. She has a lot to say about this. But basically what I do is I collect them, then I put them into, so yeah, this is it. Then I put them into a container. I transfer them. There's a process. This is assisted by my wife here, very helpful. Begrudgingly going with the flow. And then I bring them back in the lab, and you can see they all dropped their wings already. They don't need their wings anymore. They already flew. Most of them have dropped their wings. And this is basically male and female that are looking for a place to start a colony. And see that night, I collected about 12,000 L8s which was pretty neat. And then I can use them for science. What a concept. I can actually study them in the lab and make sense of what's going on and maybe what can we do about it. Absolutely. Yes, so usually depending on the time of the year, I can collect up to 5 species in the same night. It's going to be Formosan, Asian subs, and one of a native drywood, and one of a invasive drywood, and actually 2 native drywood. So, and because I've been working with them for 20 years now, I can tell them just by looking at it, especially when they're live and moving, the behavior is different. So it's, for me, it's very easy to tell which one apart. So when we bring them back to the lab in the morning, we just sort the species. And then since we need to make colonies for research, we need to sex them. So we need to flip them around and say, that's a male, it's a female. Yes, it's just like us. They have external autonomic trait that tells if it's a boy or it's a girl. These are the only ones that can reproduce again. And all the babies will be sterile except when they go for the next generation. So Florida. Welcome to the Mecca of termites. This is why I'm here in South Florida, because we have the highest termite diversity per county in the entire lower 48. Yay! Congratulations. If you are not native from Florida and you come from Boston, New York, Toronto, name it, and then you come down and you realize you have a termite problem and complain about it, well, you should have known. It's Florida. There's termites, of course. So, this is just a nice subsample of what we have in Florida out of the 20 species. They all look somewhat similar, yet different. And the morphology of the elate, which is the winged termite, and the morphology of the soldiers tells us what species it is. If you only give me a worker, they all look alike, I can't tell them. I mean, I can help a bit, but soldiers are elate, the winged termite is going to be really what tells me what it is. Even if they drop their wings, I can tell you what it is. Today, I'm only going to talk about 2 species that have an impact on your livelihood. We're going to ignore the rest. They're just in the environment doing their thing. They're not a problem. Let's not talk about these. I'm going to talk about Cryptotermis brevis, the West Indian drywood termite, which everybody has, and then Cryptotermis gastroi, the Asian subterranean termite, which is taking over the entire Florida Keys, Miami-Dade, and Broward County, and to some extent, West Palm Beach. So let's go through this one so we can knock it off and be done with it. This is probably currently the most prevalent termite across Florida. It is all the way to, I believe, North Carolina and all the way down to Texas. So it's mostly throughout the Southeast US, and it's mostly localized in a highly urbanized area. The reason is, well, the whole colony can fit into this. They're doing tiny colonies, maybe 1,000 termite at most. The whole colony starts here and stays in there. They don't need water. They don't need soil. They don't need anything but that piece of wood. Therefore, when people move around and move their cabinets around, they're moving the species everywhere. So they've been really good at piggybacking on human activity and human movement across the state and beyond the state. They're actually originating from the Peru, Chile area, one of the driest area in the world. So they evolved without water. And this is why they can survive in this building, which, by the way, I was told they're in the building right there behind me, because they're just everywhere. Everybody that has a house that is more than 10 years old, anywhere in South Florida, in an urban area, you have drywood termites. That's it. End of story. They are unique because you can only find them in structures. You cannot find them outside in trees or in the ground or anything. Water is toxic to them. I know this is absolutely weird. This is kind of alien to me, to be honest. They cannot survive with water. So if you have them in the roof and they do some damage, create a leak, the water infiltration from the rain will kill the colony. Now you have a problem, you have a leak, which is a byproduct of the initial termite damage. How do you find them? Well, who've seen that before? What is this? This is the frass. What is the frass? It's what comes out of the rear end of a termite worker. Yes, this is their poop. And you can see they're shaped as hexagonal fecal pellets. Do you know why they have this nice angular shaped instead of being nice and round like a poop should look like? It's because they're squeezing all the moisture out of it by the sheer muscle in their butt. And this pellet come out completely dry. There's not an ounce of water. So these fecal pellet, this frass can stay sitting there for a century without decomposing. It is absolutely remarkable. The problem is, as I say, they can infest a single piece of wood and they can do significant damage over 5, 10, 20 years. They have very slow metabolism. They have small colonies. Therefore, when you find this colony has been in that door, which is door to a bathroom here. I've been in that door for maybe about 10 years already. So by the time you realize, yeah, the damage can be extensive. And sometimes you just have to replace a piece of wood. Sometimes you can live with the damage. You can just do cosmetic on top of it. After you kill the colony, of course, that will help, because otherwise, if you don't kill the colony, the damage continues. This is what you're going to see mostly out of your door frame, windowsills, fascia, floors, anything that is wood that is mostly untreated, they'll go for it. And what happened is when you see that pile coming out of the wall or the floor here, is because they're kicking out the fecal material outside of their nest so they can make space for growing the colony where they are. This tells you have activity. This is fantastic. This tells you there's smoke, and you pretty much know where the fire is. They're letting you know. The problem is it's when it's an attic or when they do this inside the internal walls, you don't see it, and therefore you don't have that signal telling you have this. Yesterday with Alvin, we were going down Duval Street, and we were visiting the different venues, and I could see the termite damage everywhere from that species. Drywood termite have been doing this to Key West for close to 300 years. So we just live with it, right? Everybody has it. If you don't see the fecal material, the pellets, what you'll see is this. And they tend to swarm in May, June. So they do small swarms, so we don't really see them because they don't do these massive clouds of insects flying. All you'll see is the leftover telling you that they've been here for sometime in the past few days. And if you're lucky to see it while they do the swarming and try to find a new colony, this is what you'll see. The female is in the front, the male is in the back. The female is producing a pheromone that tells, hey, I'm looking for a boy, and the male gonna scent that and follow female to find a place to start a colony and complete the life cycle once again. If you give them time, this is what it looks like. This is the soldiers, the workers, and the king and queen. They all kind of look different. Again, they all have different function inside the colony. This is in Honduras. This was in a hotel. That means that they've been chewing for maybe 30, 40 years, and ultimately there's nothing left because you didn't do anything. That piece of wood is gone. Wood replacement is often one thing, but I'm going to explain why we actually have a weapon against these guys that is most efficient as long as we spend the time, money, and the skills on it. These termites have been spreading around the world through boats. From the Spanish invasion of South America, they infested all of their boats, and then they spread it, Spanish and Portuguese, spread it to the rest of the world, brought it to the West Indies, because now we call it the West Indian drywood termite, but technically it's from South America. And modern boats continue to do so. It's not just a thing of the past. It's still happening every day. And here in Key West, how many boats do we have right now in the marinas? 200,000 total combined, plus all the yachts. And I think this weekend we have a powerboat thing. As long as there's wood in there, they'll find it and they'll spread around. So what we do for drywood termite is structural fumigation. You tent, you create a seal in a confined space. The pest control provider inject the gas and you reset your house. You basically kill anything that breathes in that structures. It is the most regulated process in the state of Florida. Very few company can do it because you have to be fully licensed, fully trained at all the level of a pecking order. Not everybody can use that. So there's no DIY on drywood termite. Now, you can do spot treatment. So you come and you have a colony right here and you inject a pesticide. Hopefully you can reach all the galleries. A foaming agent can do that. Pest control provider can do this also if you think that this is the only colony here. The problem is, by the time you realize you have that colony here, you have another one there, another one there, another one there, and 25 others in the back there. Because you don't see them, that doesn't mean they don't exist. And this is why fumigation is ultimately the only way to go when you get tired of putting pesticide in your walls. If you're at a point where it's no longer sustainable, you reset, and that's it. The beauty of fumigation, it doesn't matter where the termites are, they're all gonna die as long as they're in this confined space. The bad news is there's no residual, which is a good thing because you don't want to breathe that. One thing, it's lethal to you too. But as you open the tent and let the gas disperse, there's nothing left in the house, absolutely no residual, which means if you have a swarm in your neighborhood, the day after that, you can be reinfested right away. But this is our lifestyle. This is where we live, and therefore they're part of the environment, and it's up to you to decide when you're going to fumigate your house. It's just a matter of time when it's time. Currently, we have about 70,000 fumigation happening in Florida every year. My guess is this number is going to go up because the population of people keeps going up. Therefore, more houses to treat eventually. Give it time. Yep. Yes, I always say people realize they have drywood termite mostly during the swarming event, which happens during May and June, which means all the pest control in Florida, South Florida primarily, receive a phone call on June 14th, give or take, and book their fumigation on that day because you're freaking out. You want these termites out now. Here's the silver lining. By the time you realize you find the termites in your house, they've been here for a decade. Waiting another 6 months is not going to do any difference because they're so slow at chewing the wood that a few additional months is not going to make any difference in terms of damage. So the pest control providers do most of the fumigation, they book all most of the fumigation in May, June for the rest of the year. And comes hurricane season. And then they have a limited crew. My suggestion is when you realize you have drywood, schedule your fumigation sometime in November or December after the hurricane season, when these folks have cleared out the backlog of fumigation that they have to do for two reasons. It's easier on the crew to do this in November instead of a scorching sun in June, and the humidity and the rain and all of this. And two, because a lot of folks have a sense of urgency that it has to be happening now. They want to skip the line and they're ready to pay more for it. So, I mean, it works for everybody. You get your treatment and the company is doing good business. I have no issue with that. But the rationale is if we can reduce the load on the crew so they can do their job properly for the rest of the year, there's no reason to do the treatment right now. You can wait. I mean, I made my wife wait 3 years before I fumigated my own house. I'm a termite dude. I say, yeah, the cabinets, just a cabinet, it's fine. Oh, they're in the walls too. Oh, they're in bathrooms too. Okay, it's time. It's kind of my approach on this. There's no reason to freak out right away. It's just that, oh yeah, it's gonna be time to fumigate. Do it at your own schedule. And you can, because you have to vacate your house for 2 days or 3 days, depending on if they change the law, which we're about to. It might be 3 days now instead of 2. You may do that. Oh, I'm on vacation during that time. Can we schedule it there? And if you tell them 6 months ahead, they may be able to make arrangements. So that would be something you deal with your pest control provider on agreeing on what to do and when to do it, basically. So, they'll let you know exactly what to do. If anything that stays that is consumable need to be bagged, double bagged actually, and anything that you want to make sure is not exposed, not that there's any risk or anything, you can just take it out. They do this for bed bugs too, by the way. Yes. Yeah. For drywood termites, I would say after 5 years, an annual inspection would be good. And especially you can start seeing the frass coming up or the wings piling up on the corner. That tells you that something has been going on. There's no reason to do an inspection in the first few years. First of all, because if the treatment is successful, which they are in 99% of the cases, you know that if there's a new infestation, you're not going to see it for the next 5 years anyway. And you have a warranty on this anyway. If a treatment fails, happens once every blue moon, you're going to have that swarm again the next year. And then you can say, hey, warranty, and they come back, they do it. Happened to me. They came back. So the warranty usually is good for you. They can extend it. It's up to you to do this. If you completely remodel your house and bring in a lot of new furniture, cabinets, you don't know where this cabinet's been sitting on a warehouse for years. Most of the time, I get cases of, actually, my own termite infestation of this species in my kitchen cabinet came from the warehouse. The cabinet came with the termites, vice versa. Termite came with the cabinets. So it's when you need to redo your roof because of damage or leak or whatever, when you need to do everything. If you need to schedule a fumigation for drywood termite, do it after all the remodeling is done, just in case whatever material was used was actually infested. It's rare, but it happens. So it's always advised to do everything you need to do to your house, fumigate, and you don't have to worry for another 5 years for that species alone. Okay, we're done with drywood termites. I really wanted to talk about it because it touches everybody. It's really everybody's problem. So I want to make sure that I talk about this one so we understand why the other termite is a completely different beast, and we need to look at it from a completely different angle because fumigation doesn't work on subterranean termites. So you can't say, I have termites, I'm going to fumigate. This is not the actual approach. I have termites. First question is going to be, which one? Once you know which one, you know if you need to fumigate or do something else. Okay, any question on drywood termites before we move on to subs? Okay, let's do this. So, termite invaders, West Indian drywood termite, Formosan serpent termite, Asian serpent termite, Western drywood termite, and a couple of more are good at piggybacking on human activity. And they all come with boats. They can associate themselves with human activity. Usually a colony or part of it can survive a transport established in boats, especially if they have access to wood. And as you know, the nice luxury yachts all have beautiful mahogany or whatever expensive wood they want to spend in there. And because we have high trading worldwide activity, we have a high, what we call propagate pressure for a successful invasion of this species. And really the prime culprit of spreading these invasive termites in the world is actually not the commercial boat to move merchandise across the world, is actually privately owned leisure boats. These are the major, they're mostly responsible for moving termite species. I know I have to say that if we need to find the money to take care of a termite problem, I think they can chip in. They have the wealth, right? This is recorded, right? Okay, termites, yes, they are Noah's worst nightmare. It's not just a joke. It's not the biblical proportion of it. The reality is boats are truly the ones spreading termites around. And they first infest in coastal area, and then they can move inside if you give them time. So if we look at Florida, we have two primary subterranean termite species. We have a Formosan subterranean termite, Coptotermes formosanus, and we have the Asian subterranean termite, which is Coptotermes gastroi. You can see that Coptotermes gastroi, the Asian sub, is mostly from West Palm Beach all the way to the Florida Keys, and while the Formosan subterranean termite is mostly from Miami all the way to Virginia. Now, we just found it in Virginia, and all the way southeast US, all the way down to Texas. So this is from 2015. This map has changed since 2015. But the interesting thing is West Palm Beach, so West Palm, Broward and Dade are the only 3 counties in the entire US to have two most devastating termite species in the entire world. So you guys only have to deal with the Asian subs, but it's okay. It's the worst of them all anyway, so you're good. Okay, so we've been monitoring their spread over the years. This has been a sample provided by homeowners, pest control providers, and programs we've been organizing over the past 40 years with my predecessors and now myself. And we can see that in the what we call the South Florida metropolitan area from West Palm all the way from Riviera Beach, actually all the way down to Homestead, you can see that over the years, the species initial establishment has spread, which means that the number of structures at risk of infestation has been going up, and it's not gonna end up until the entire environment is fully saturated, where everybody's at risk. Just give it another 20 years. It's everybody's problem in South Florida. This is for us in Broward and Dade. The Formosan subterranean termite is a big problem across Florida, except you. It's too warm here for the Formosan. Remarkable. I think we had 2 samples of Formosan in the past 20 years. So a non-issue. But for the rest of the state, it is an absolute big problem. And you can see wherever you have a bunch of red dots, it's where you have big cities, mostly. So they're piggybacking on our activity. And now the subject of our attention for the rest of the day, the Asian subterranean termite, Coptermis gastroi. It first showed up in the first time detected in 1996 in a church in Miami-Dade, actually in the city of Miami. And then it starts showing up in Fort Lauderdale, Key West, Key Largo, West Palm Beach, Naples, Fort Myers, St. Pete, and just in 2024, we found them in 6 other locations across basically anywhere south of Orlando. So they've been spreading all of these new dots that you can see up there. I got it 6 months ago, basically, because we've been raising awareness about their spread and talking about the pest control provider across the state. See, if you see anything weird, let us know. Send us a sample. We'll tell you what it is. And guess what? It pays off because now we can almost monitor real time the actual spread of a species across the state. And I don't know, well, we assumed that it was too cold. St. Petersburg was, Tampa was simply too cold for Asian subs. They are truly tropical species. We were wrong, badly wrong, because now they're fully infested the naval base in the Tampa, South Tampa area. And they just showed up in Bartow, which is a big boat lake industry over there. So boats that were infested from the coast were brought in a trailer and that established there. And guess what? Boom, they brought the Formosan and the Asian within a year. We detected them in Bartow. And we found them in Melbourne, in Grand Valkyria. So yeah, they're spreading. So this is Fort Lauderdale. I don't know if you can see it here. No, I can't. Either. See the big red blob in the middle? This is where I live. So I understand the problem more than anyone else. I mean, as much as you do. This is Miami area. You can see within the past 20 years how fast they spread. It is absolutely remarkable how successful they are to do this massive swarm that I just showed you earlier. That's that species. And we're talking about 2 to 5 billion elates, winged termites flying at once, one day in March. Each dot is one sample that was provided to us. So the dot doesn't mean you have an infestation, especially if one flew in from the outside and went and died, because these guys need a lot of moisture. So if they come in, they're mostly going to die. But it tells you you're in an area at risk now, because that means there's colonies established in your neighborhood. And we want that dot on the map so we can tell the rest of the neighborhood that this is now the new norm. This is part of your problem now, that you have to be prepared and protect yourself from this emerging threat, because now it's going to be there forever, by the way. You're familiar with that, right? So it first showed up in the port area up north, just north of the airport. and they've been popping up random places. They're in Pine Key, they're in Marathon, they're in La Mirada, they're in Key Largo. They have been spreading quite successfully across. So this is a website that we have for anybody in Florida. If you click on that, we'll tell you how to collect a sample, how to ship it to us. Make sure we have an email address, a location, and a date, and a name, so we can come back to you and tell you what it is. Every year I receive a bunch of Ziploc with no email, no contact information. Therefore, I cannot tell you what it is. I don't know how to reach you back. We stopped making phone call. It's not really cost effective for us to do it. So email address, that means there's paper trail, and you can tell your pest control provider, professor at University of Florida told me what it is, so you're wrong, right? We've been there a few times. And it's for peace of mind also. By the way, if you have Asian serpent termite infestation, chances you also have drywood anyway. So that means you have 2 termite problems to take care of now, not just one. So this is, I'm very proud of this picture. I'm just bragging here. That flying termites, it took me 3 days to get it. Yeah, it is really hard. They move fast, and my camera, I need to be this far from it. Anyway, I got that, tells you what to do. This is the soldiers and the elate. So these are the 2 different casts that we need, either one of them, to tell what species it is, to confirm what you have when you find it. Now, these are 15 of the 20 species that we have in Florida. It's always termite season in Florida. They all swarm at different time of the year. For the 3 that we care of on the top here, we have Formosans, not for you, which is in May, June, which is unfortunately the same time as the drywood termite swarm in May, June. For Asian serpent termite, the Coptotemus gastroi, the second line, it's slightly earlier. So what you're going to have a big swarm of termites in March, April. And when these guys start being not as busy, you're going to have all the drywood termite coming up. So it's going to be back to back. You may have a slight overlap, but because you can see some kind of rainbow color on the wing for Asian serpent termite, this has led to misidentification massively, because the way we know if it's a drywood termite is because of that rainbow color on the wing. Asian serpent termites have this too, and not every single pest control folks in Florida knows that yet. I'm working on making sure we all know now. So misidentification has been a problem, but time of swarming should tell you what it is in the first place. If it's in March, it's not going to be drywood. If it's late May, it's not going to be subs. So timing of it, there's going to be freak events. Sometimes they swarm at the wrong time. It happens. But in most cases, when I receive a sample, I don't even have to look at it. I pretty much know what it is. And of course, I look at it and I confirm what it is. Swarming season, this is for, on top is Asian serpent termite, and the bottom is Formosan serpent termite for us in Broward County. It tells you when they swarm, and you're going to have activity and then nothing for a few days, and then they're going to come up again, and then nothing for a few days, and then that big one where 50% of all termites swarm that night, and then normal again, and it's going to be spread out over a month and a half or so. And sometimes you have weird event like in June that happens, but usually the swarm are so small you're not even going to see it. And what homeowners will find is this: a few dead one of these, belly up, somewhere in a corner in the bathroom or the kitchen for that matter. They can't get their way through the attic vent for the bathroom or for the kitchen because sometimes the lights from the actual, the lights you put for your kitchen actually seep through the column, and basically they have access to it. And when you have millions and millions of termites, a few of them may make their way, fall into the room, and eventually die because it's too dry, and this is what you will find. Again, if you find a few Asian serpent termite in your house, it's not a problem. It doesn't mean they come from your house. They mostly, 99% of the time, they flew from the outside. It just tells you have termites, Asian serpent termite in your neighborhood. Therefore, you are potentially at risk. And that's really the subtlety that you need to get. What time is this? I get carried away very easily. Okay, I'm going to wrap the first part in about 10 minutes, which is we're on time. We're good. Eventually, if you start seeing this, a pile of wings somewhere in your house, that is not good because they may have swarmed from the inside. And if you were in the room while they swarm, you have these guys coming out from a corner of your wall and they're all flying attracted by the TV. I've known people who have experienced this. It's not pleasant. Now, again, all of these swarmers are not the problem. They're all going to die. They're not going to find a mate and find a place to make a new colony in your house. Bad news, you already have a colony in your house. They're somewhere in the walls, in your attics, or in your subfloor. That is what happened. So the quantity usually tells you if it just flew from the outside for Asian subterranean termite or they flew from the inside, especially if you're in there. What is very easy for me to identify, the drywood termites don't have these colors. So when I look under the microscope, the back is kind of nice brown, covered with hair, and the belly is kind of like nice, like a brown golden color. So when you look back and forth, if you see this pattern of colors, you know it's Asian serpent termite. It is not the drywood termite. The problem is when they all dried up, they kind of look like a small black blurb, and we can't tell anything until you give it to me under the scope. If you have access to the wings, and again, a microscope like I do, only the Formosan and the Asian serpent termites have this covered hair on their wings. No other termite in Florida has this. So again, it's a telltale sign to know it's at least Coptotermes, one of the two, when we just have wings. Sometimes all we have is wings, by the way. I just found these wings. While there, I can tell you what it is just from the wing. By the way, we can do this. Soldier, they're very cool and unique. They have this beautiful head, teardrop shape. They have a pitch white belly, the abdomen, because the white stuff you see is actually glue that they can ooze out from their head because they have a nice opening and they use this as defensive secretions. They're not going to hurt you unless you've been playing with them for 20 years like I do, where you get a sensitivity or damn allergy to it. Yay. I don't have works comp on that. Okay, the Formosan serpent termite has this triangular fontanelle, which is the hole where the glue comes out, and they have two pair of hair. I'm not going to go through the detail. This is the one you have to deal with. The Asian serpent termite, beautifully round hole, not triangular like Formosan, and a single pair of hair on each side. That is how we tell if it's a Formosan or an Asian, especially in Broward County where we have both everywhere. So yes, complex life cycle. This is actually Coptotermes. They do this inundative swarm, this massive clouds of insects flying everywhere. And they have a life cycle, as I said. The colony, when is the birth of a colony? This is an honest question. It's not a trick question, by the way. When do you think is the beginning of a life of a colony? If you consider the colony as a biological unit, when the colony starts, even before that, as soon as a male and a female fly, find each other, drop their wings, and hide somewhere in the environment or your house, this is when the colony starts. They mate within a few days, they lay eggs within a few weeks, and they have their first brood within a few months. So that life cycle starts at the birth of a colony when the male and the female. So when you see this massive swarm in March, that means that within the next few days, you're going to have all of these new colonies being established, which is the birth of these colonies everywhere in the environment. Good news, 99.999% of them will fail to do so. The bad news is 0.001% of a few billion is still a lot of freaking colonies that you have to take into account. So with this inundative swarm, the environment is going to continue to bear more and more colonies over time. So right now we're in the initiation phase where the species is progressively spreading across the island of Key West to a point where they're going to be everywhere infesting anything that they can find. So don't shoot the messenger, please. The problem is bad and it's not going to get better. Doesn't mean we have to give up and do nothing about it. I hope by the end of this talk, we can disagree on that statement and say we can do something about it to protect our structures and to protect the urban tree canopy that is currently at risk. So it's going to be gloomy and kind of depressing, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's something we can do, and hopefully by the end of the day, we can take that message home. Now, the colony is going to grow. Reproduction means they can produce alates. These winged termites is when the colony has reached maturity. They go through their own teenage years, puberty, technically. It's when they produce these winged termites. And eventually down the road, wait another decades or so, the colony grows old and dies. It happens, replaced by a new one, if lucky or not. So the queen in the first year looks like this. Then over the years get bigger and bigger because, as I said earlier, they become these egg-laying machines. If you've seen Aliens, the second one, remember that queen is laying all these alien eggs with that weird thing. Actually, James Cameron got the inspiration from that. So you have to create termites for aliens too, for aliens. But the problem is, you can see they do not produce alates yet. The winged termite cannot be coming out because they're not big enough. They don't have a resource yet. They're not mature yet. But when the colony is big enough, so if you're an egg, you can basically go from an egg to larva to worker, maybe soldiers. But then when you're big enough as a biological unit, as a colony, that pathway opens up and a bunch of eggs now can become nymph and grow wings, alates, and fly out during the swarming time. So when we reach maturity, then they're going to swarm year after year after year after year. So a colony can produce millions of alates of winged termite throughout its entire lifetime. And if you don't stop that, that means there's more colonies that's going to be made. And this is part of a discussion that we need to have. Is this is an ongoing problem that's never going to stop. We lost the battle 25 years ago when the first termite activity was detected on the Keys, in the Keys. So this is, and now we're doing it 25 years later with a delay because there was no sense of urgency. But now we're dealing with a fallout of not doing much. I mean, we're doing a lot of things as a whole, but I think it's time for the city as a whole. I'm here to bring awareness that I hope you can carry the message behind the walls of this room, that this is something that if everybody who lives there, I'm not talking about tourists like us and people coming for boating and leaving, bringing the termites and leaving, that it's not their problem. It's people who live here that have to deal with this problem. And therefore, as a community, it's good that we're all on the same page so we knew what to expect and what can be done about it. It's really hopefully my message today. And they can invest into this, what we call perennial reproductive outputs, which means they're gonna basically make more colonies every year after they reach that critical mass that takes a few years to get to. One thing I want to mention quickly is usually I go another 2 hours just on that concept for pest control providers. I'm not going to bore you with that. But one thing, as I said earlier, workers is a caste that's going to keep molting until they die out of old age. So they're going to keep molting forever until it's beginning too old and die as a juvenile individual. Soldier caste is final. So once it turns to soldiers, that's it. They don't molt anymore. And once it turns into a winged termite, an alate, that's it. They're adults. They don't molt anymore. So workers are the only one that are going to keep molting forever until they die. That's going to have a huge implication on how we kill them in the second part of this talk. Okay, we're almost there. Reproduction. Next. So if this colony is big enough, it can produce all of these, fly out, make more colonies, and infest boats, trees, houses. Everybody's on the same, receive the same service at this point. Now, we usually do not fumigate for subterranean termites because if you're in a single family house, the colony that is chewing in your walls on the 2x4 and the floor and the attic is connected to the ground. They need moisture. Contrary to the drywood termite I talked about earlier, who cannot live with water, these guys live massive amount of moisture, therefore they bring the water with them in the walls. Often when you detect it is when you have a patch of moisture in a corner, you think it's a leak. It's actually the termite bringing all the water to make themselves home in your home. If you tent the house and fumigate, you're only going to kill the termites that are in your house at the time. And therefore, the colony that is expanding away, I should have put that slide earlier, it's going to come, is it can infest 2 houses down the road and the tree that is about 200 or 300 feet away from your house, because they have tunnels going in underground, connecting all of these, what we call feeding sites for them, right? So if you tent, you only kill the termites at a time. The moment you remove a tent and you remove the gas, the colony that is connected to that will come back immediately within a few days. So tenting is usually not the way to go for subterranean termite, except boats, because they have nowhere to go. The whole colony is known to be contained on that artificial raft, which historically has been spreading. But here, when you put the tarp there all the way down to the water, water is a perfect seal for the gas to not be able to escape anywhere. It's a small volume. There's companies that only do that throughout the Keys and all the way down in Dade, I believe. So fumigation is only good for environments that are contained. So boats and RVs. RVs can also move termites around. Now, the idea about boats moving things around is if you have a termites coming from the outside and moving inside the canal where they can moor, that termite colony that is inside the boat that came from, I don't know, Singapore, Australia, Sao Paulo, I don't know, Caymans, then they disperse. The swarm is basically inundating the environment. Most of them dies, but a few lucky ones established. Fast forward 10 years, we have major swarms. We have more termite established, most termite colonies established throughout the neighborhood. One of these boats get infested and come out of this area, move to somewhere else in Florida or somewhere else in the world, and spread the termites further. Again, the boats are the primary driving force spreading these invasive termites across the tropics at this point, worldwide. I think it's the most invasive termites in the world at this point, except for maybe the drywood termite, but they had 300 years head start, let's say. Sometimes we have infested landscape material that can be fully infested, that can be moved around for no landscaping. Pallets, we've seen a few cases of infested pallets moving termites. And as I said, RVs, we had a case, I think in 2015, of an RV that was somewhere in Key West, that's been sitting there for years, and eventually was sold to somebody in Sarasota. They moved the RV up in Sarasota. Next thing they know, there was a massive colony inside the RV because he was sitting stationary for too long, and the more colony moved in and got carried away. So I don't want to scare anyone that termites are everywhere, we're going to die, but it's good to be mindful that we are part of a problem. Eventually, we're responsible for moving them around because we don't pay attention. And I understand that, except for him and me. We see them everywhere. It's our life. Okay, their impact is simple. This is a renovation. It was supposed to cost close to $10,000 of a kitchen. This is literally 2 streets from where I live in Fort Lauderdale. It cost them $75,000 instead, because all the 2x4 that was part of the structure of the kitchen was gone. And this damage happened within less than 2 years. The problem with subterranean termites, as they're connected to the underground and have a high metabolic activity, they can grow to millions. It's completely different from drywood termites that can do tiny colonies, slow metabolism, 1,000 termites at most. These guys, no, they can grow, and when they reach that critical mass of maturity, it's millions and millions of termites, it's millions of mouths to feed. So the potential for damage is actually much faster. And by the time you realize you have them, it's often too late. We had a case in West Palm Beach, multi-million-dollar villa. They just installed a brand new door frame. Within 6 months, that door frame collapsed because they had access to it and did all the damage within 6 months. So it's something, again, to be mindful that by the time you realize, it's a little too late, unless you're prepared for it. Yes. So treated lumber, we usually don't go for it, but the treatments tend to fade over time. And usually the treatment is against fungal decomposition. I mean, the number one reason why wood get destroyed throughout South Florida is humidity and fungal decay. It's not termites. Termite is just on top of all of this. So treated wood can protect the fungus, will minimize the potential for damage to get to it because it doesn't taste great for them, and they tend to go for something else if they can. But if they have no alternative and the treated wood has been there for long enough for the treatment efficacy to basically fall apart and be subdued, then the termites will go for it eventually. It's a matter of time. I've seen, these pressure-treated fences is good for sometimes, and eventually I've seen termites moving in readily for it eventually. A mature colony can eat about 300 pounds of wood per year. This is with data we accumulate in our lab since we're growing them so we can kill them, learn how to kill them. This is a drywall. You can see they made a nice house of their own inside. Usually, pest control provider favorite tool is a screwdriver because you poke, and up, you went through the wall. You have termites. And what they do is the soldiers come out, and you can see one of them has this white goo on the head. It's the glue they secrete to defend because they think it's like a ant or whatever that came in, destroyed the nest. So they're here ready to defend physically and chemically. Now, the reality is that dry wall that is somewhere at eye level, the colony doesn't come from here. It comes from the ground. This termite, it's in the name, subterranean termite. And I don't know if you realize, but this is the wood floor. This is a crawl space. And you can see the electrical conduit. You can see the pipes from the bathtub. And they actually follow the pipe all the way to the bathtub area, go up, and then have access to the floor, chew the floor. And here, this was also in West Palm Beach. The homeowner who are snowbirds living in Boston, nothing bad happened. They come in November, and as one of the owner went in, fell through the floor because the wood damage happened by the time that they were not there. So horror story like this, I've heard a few of these. Usually you find the damage before it's actually before the house collapse, but by the time you find out this extensive damage, and it's going to cost you one way or another. They follow root system, they follow electrical conduit, they follow any pipe of sorts, they follow walls. So they hit the pipe, they'll just follow it until they find something they can feed on, basically. That's the reality. I should have brought that slide earlier of what a subterranean termite colony looks like. It's a biological entity that is amorphous. It's spread out in the environment, but is moving from one place to another through galleries, tiny galleries that is no bigger than my pinky here. So they have this ability to move around and basically find food, infest, and do potential damage. This is the ceiling of a house. Here they went through the drain. Here it's in the attic where nobody could see it. When you reach that state, it's bad because this is paper thin layer of wood left in that 2x4. And that's what is happening currently in part of Key West, some more than others. You can see some communities are a bit more exposed. This data point have been provided by homeowners and pest control providers here in the Key, especially one company provided close to 90% of all the data. And this is just a tip of the iceberg. This is what has been documented and not all the ones that have never been documented to us. So chances, this is a snapshot of what was a decade ago. Currently, it's probably far worse than that in terms of how far the spread. And if you're concerned about your neighborhood, let me see if I can tell you there. Okay, so we have this map that we populate from submission to us for identification. I'm just going to follow here. So you can see there's a lot of data. All the red dots is Asian serpent termite confirmed, either infestation or after a winged termite collected. So it doesn't mean an infestation per se. You can see this was in the boat, of course, on March 4th, 2013. So we have data coming back from more than a decade ago. We found them at the airport, of course. We start seeing them more recently in Duval Street and others. So I would say this neighborhood is probably more at risk right now. But if you're coming down from the Keys, again, where do they pop up? Not in the middle of nowhere. They pop up in cities where you have access to boat every single time. If you go up, we need better job, absolutely. And that's this part of my message today. If you find termites, please send it my way. I'll put dots on this dot. Oh, I know it's there. It's just nobody sent a sample, so it's hard for us to document. So this is what I said. This is the tip of the iceberg. The reality is they're probably spread out much more. Yesterday, we were driving down on, I think it was Marathon or Morada, one of the two, and we see that big termite activity on one of the trees that we're driving down at 40 miles an hour. So we can find it. If somebody's looking, you'll find. So this map, by the way, is for you to use. It's publicly available. I always put it on as a Google map layer on my phone. So wherever I go, I was like, okay, what termite do we have in this area? I don't know, it's a habit of mine. But just that you know, it's not just South Florida. It's all over the West Indies. It's in part of Brazil. It's not just us. At this point, it's worldwide around the tropics. That species has spread against through leisure boats over the past 50 years. Really, they've done a remarkable job. Okay, let me wrap this up so we can take a quick break. Trees. This is why we're here right now. These termites can infest boats and structures, but trees is actually a big part of the puzzle that we need to take in consideration every single time. Reason is termites are attracted to light, but they are attracted to trees. They start a colony, they go down at the base of a tree, they chew it up. This is a gumbo, and you can see they just chew it like it was candy. We had a case of gumbo right here. This is what they do. This was at high level, but if you go down, the hole is big as this, and the tree collapsed on its own weight. We've seen cases. This is oak tree. You can see over time, this is left. This is what's left. This is a palm tree. We have it here. They feed on palm differently. They don't go from the inside. They just shred the outside, which makes it very ugly. And people tend to not like this and cut it down. We found them in sable palm. You can see that mud tube coming up. I know it's hard on the video, on the image here, but when you start looking, and I tell you, some pest control providers, they're good. They know exactly what to look for. You can see that mud tubes 10 feet, 20 feet away, and you know that you have a window of opportunity to take care of a termite. Elates fly to trees. This is a royal ponciana. You can see that mud tube. It's about 20, 30 feet up in the canopy. Bold cypress, the tree from the inside. This is a strangler fig. You can see that mud piling up at the base of a roots splitting up here. Oak trees. Oak trees have interesting textures and color. I look at it and immediately I can tell if there's termite because the texture and color of the fecal material from subterranean termites tells them they're here. It's just that if you don't set your eyes in the mode of looking for termite activity, you can very easily overlook it. I'm always on termite looking activity, so I'm always gonna see it I mean, yesterday we were just walking Duval and we're like, the termite activity, and another one here. So it's what we do. Sometimes they cover the entire bark with mud. Pruning wounds are a fantastic place to look at for carton material, that big fecal material that piled up over the years. This is Norfolk pines, Araucaria species. This is literally, I can see it from the window from my house, that tree. It's a beautiful, beautiful mud tube going up the tree. And you can see on the picture, the size of the galleries is bigger than my hand. And this is an amazing colony doing that right now. Date pine, they will definitely go for it. I have an example of what they do to the date pine here. They chew on the outside, girdling the tree. Therefore, they can kill the tree within a few years, potentially. The good news is they're on the outside, so you can see them easily. And this is where inspection is going to be half a job. If you know they're here, you're halfway through. You're halfway through solving the problem. This is why I always, when I do the termite course for professional in February, I bring termite professionals from around the state. I make sure that they get the memo that inspecting trees is now part of their job. It's not just inspecting the house. So trees are part of the problem because that species specifically actually starts in trees before they're in your house. So if we can catch them before in the house, you can minimize damage in the structure, and guess what? You can save a tree. Yes. We have tools. It's just a matter of this is a people problem, not a scientific one. I'll get to this in my second part of my talk in a minute. Phoenix palms, again, the tree. Pruning wood, again, this is an oak tree. I mean, this is like telling you, hey, we're here, do something. If you poke at that weird texture there, this is what comes out. The termites come at you. They're upset. You broke their house. How dare you? The soldiers, as I said, you can see the hole in that head that they produce that thing. This is actually not that tree. This comes from that tree. This was Hurricane Irma. So Katrina, Wilma, Irma, especially Wilma and Irma, hit the Keys very hard. You got flooded and you lost a lot of trees because of the strength of the storm. But some of these trees probably fell down, despite that they should have survived. But now you put the termites and you hollow 80% of what's supposed to keep the tree up and turn it into poop, then suddenly the wind comes down, can take that tree down. And you can see that that tree collapsed, opened up like a flower, and fell on the house and on the car. In that case, I know the insurance didn't cover because it was not a storm problem, it was a termite problem. And you can see where it's a people's problem, is what language would you use? The thing is, I know for a fact that that mud tube was visible for years and the owner didn't know. They didn't have a pest control provider doing regular inspection. It was a problem in the making that was just ready to happen. It's a tragedy to me. So if you're in South Florida, in these areas, we have all these red dots, please check for trees. Any question as we're taking a break?
So if you have a tree,
Yeah.
take that tree down,
Mm-hmm.
replace the tree,
Yep.
take that.
You have, so from a biological perspective, yes. There's, as I said, these are part of the environment and therefore everything is going to be at risk eventually. So replacing a tree is obviously the right thing to do, but then maintaining it alive is going to be part of a budget line in the city, I believe at some point, to do regular inspection, because if you see that mud tube coming up, then you can kill the colony, and I'll go through that extensively in the next hour, and stop the damage, and the tree can keep on going. I mean, I will show you cases where I know for a fact we saved 100 trees, at least in a pilot project we did. I'll go extensively in the talk. So let's take a quick break. I need it. And we'll come back in 5, 10. You're good? 10 minutes? Less? More? Okay, 5, 10.
A few moments later.
On that side now. Yeah. Okay, so now that we know everything about the termite problem, how do we kill them, right? That's what we're here today. Yeah. The story, it's complicated, and it's all about raising expectation. I've seen many cases in the US, in Australia, New Zealand, Portugal, Spain, France, Israel, Brazil, where local government says, oh, we're going to throw a bunch of money at it and we're going to solve a problem, we're going to eradicate it. And they all failed miserably because they set the expectation, where it was completely impossible. So let's set the expectation. We lost. End of the story. We can do something about it to minimize their impact on our economy and on our environment. That we can do. And if we set that expectation, that we understand that it's a complex problem that is going to be ongoing, potentially get worse for some time, then we know what to expect, and therefore we can, there's no way to fail, right? If you set the expectation right, you will fail. It's as simple as this. So this is why it's a word of caution on, we can do something about it. Now, Clear disclaimer, I'm a University of Florida employee. My job is to study the biology of termites and provide education materials for the pest control industry throughout the state so they can do their job in a way that is at the service of the homeowners. It's as simple as this. You're all my stakeholders. I all owe you my time. This is why I'm here today. I do it because I care about this termite problem. I'm passionate about it. And also, I want to make sure that what I know and understand about termites is something that you can use for the foreseeable future and help raise awareness in the community. Therefore, whatever I'm going to talk about it, I'm not making a penny out of it. I'm a third independent party who's telling the industry manufacturers that their products is great or sucks. I don't care if they give me any money or not to tell the product's great. I'm going to tell it what it is. So this is the problem. This is an amorphous amoeba-like biological entity that you don't know where they are, except sometimes you have that mud tube coming out of a tree or somewhere in your house tells you you have a problem and you don't know where it is. You don't know where the king and queen is. It could be literally 300 feet away from where you see there. And that's what makes a problem very complex. This is a picture in my lab. Each of these box is an independent colony that I started from scratch from all the winged termite that you saw in the video that I collected from my front yard. So technically, all of these are my babies. So interestingly, there's about 10 colonies that I made the same night my daughter was born. So I actually have colonies that are as old as my daughter, 8 years now. Anyway, and I use them to study how control method actually works at the colony level over long distance of foraging to emulate what actual termites do in the real life. Historically, it's been the way it's been done. You put 50 termites in a petri dish, you put whatever toxic stuff, shake, shake, cake, everybody dies. Yeah, it kills termite. You can do the same with a hammer. So I'm trying to bring biological relevancy to the system so we understand when you use a chemical or you use a pesticide or any approach to take care of a termite problem, what does it do far away from wherever you apply the product, where the rest of the colony is hiding, where the king and queen is potentially. And if you go to my lab right now, this is what you would see, big tubes. We simulate the gallery system of a long distance. It's fun. The way right now we deal with subterranean termites is we're down to two primary tools. We have liquid termiticide and we have baits. Specifically what we call the CSI bait, which are chitin synthesis inhibitors. I'll explain it briefly what it is later. So when the pest control provider comes, they can offer either one of them or both, by the way. Liquid termiticide, the philosophy is inherited for 3 or 4 generations of pest control providers through an industry that has been moving from one chemical to another. Remember DDT, chlordane, heptachlor, dieldrin, all of these magical chemicals that killed everything and stayed forever? Well, we phased them out because they killed everything and stayed forever, right? So now the more modern pesticide used for liquid termiticides tend to be shorter lived and not as bad for the rest of the environment. So that means the chemical barrier you put around your house potentially is here to prevent termites from accessing it for 1 to 10 years, depending on the flooding event, right? We have studies showing that if you have a massive flooding, a lot of this product is gone by then, despite the fact it's supposed to bind to the soil wherever you treat it. All of these liquid termiticide are non-repellent, so the termites cannot really feel it when they forage through the treated soil. They don't detect it, and then they kind of die at some point. They are broad-spectrum insecticide. They kill still a bit of everything that has 6 or 8 legs. They tend to be non-water soluble to some extent. Again, the flooding event is changing the rules on that, and we're kind of in the flooding prone zone, so keep it in mind. They tend to be non-persistent, again, because of what happened to the previous ones, and they are lethal time dose dependent. Not getting to the weeds, the idea is the more you put, the faster the termite die. It's what it means. The more product you put in the ground, as a termite is exposed, the faster it dies. Which means that as you create a barrier around the structure, any termite colony coming from the soil in and out is going to be exposed and die at relatively close distance where the treatment happened. And what's going to happen is you create a death zone that any termites coming in say, oh, something is wrong there, and going to go to your neighbor's house. So you potentially have protected your house to some extent for some time, but the colony is actually minimally impacted. We have ample evidence for the past 20 years that liquid termiticides are so good. They kill the termites so fast that it backfires, but it creates an area where termites know something is wrong and stay away from it. A lot of the industry in the US, 80% of it still don't want to accept that fight because it's a very profitable and efficient way, but you don't kill the colony. Well, another thing that we notice is because termites keep foraging to find more food source, they were able to bypass, to go deep enough and then infest the structure there. Because we're so close to the water, and if you go deep enough, you hit the water, that might be a good thing. The bad thing is if with liquid termiticide right there and the water is right there, then you may have contamination environment with a liquid termiticide. So, but death zone has been a problem because we know we can protect structure, but you don't reduce the population. And what happens if you have a colony that can complete the life cycle? That colony can swarm and make more colonies. So it's not really sustainable in the long term. It's a good protection, but technically it's a band-aid where you're kicking the can down the road for more problems down the road. The alternative is chitin synthesis inhibitor baits. These is a completely different philosophy. The idea is to eliminate the colony, not structural protection. You get structural protection as a consequence of eliminating the colony. And that philosophy is fundamentally different from everybody's perspective, including mine. Okay, the baits tend to be non-repellent there because the termite needs to feed on it. They don't have to forage around it, they need to feed on it. It only targets termites, it's only active upon molting. And if you remember what I told you, these workers keep molting forever. Well, when it's time for them to shed their skin to make the other one, this is when it activates like a time bomb, kills a termite, and within 2 to 3 months, all workers dies. And what did I say? If you remove all the workers, soldiers and king queen starve to death. So this means that they have a lethal time that is dose independent. They can chew on it as much as you want. It's not going to make them die faster, which means you don't have that secondary repellency, that death zone, because it's too good, too fast. They're going to stay away from the product. Here in this case, they're going to keep chewing on it. By the time they realize something wrong, it's already too late. They reach a point of no return. So if you have this bait station in the ground, now we have three manufacturers. We have a Centricon, we have the Trelona, and we have the Xterra system that are placed around the structure. Any termite foraging, intercepting it, feeding on it will be eliminated within 90 days. We have a scripted scenario on that at this point. So you eliminate the colony, which means the colony cannot produce alates. You stop the life cycle. You prevented another 100 colonies to be created in the next 10 years. So that is where thinking of sustainability can come into context. The idea with bait is as they feed on it and it does not affect them because each termite is on its own schedule for molting to their next skin, they have plenty of time to share it with everybody, what we call trophallaxis. It's a sharing of food, mouth to mouth, but to mouth to some extent. And they share it with every single individual. Within 10 days, everybody has acquired it. Nothing is happening. But if a termite come back home and say, it's time for me to shed my skin to the new one, dies in the process, get cannibalized by its nestmate, because termites are really efficient about resource conservation, and feed the rest of the colony with that byproduct of cannibalism, including the queen. So the way baits work is, this is a histology where we cut the termite in very, very thin section. In A, this is a beautiful skin that is nice and in good shape. And when the new cuticle comes in B, it's basically is all wrinkled underneath. The old cuticle is going away, and then the wrinkle expand and create the new skin. This is how termite can grow a little bit. What happened is here the termite is shedding its skin, but if it's been exposed and has ingested the bait, this is what the skin looks like. It's completely porous, which means as a termite shed its skin, it bleeds to death and die in agonizing manners. Serves them well, right? Poor thing. In addition to this, as the queen and king are exposed, suddenly the queen is unable to lay viable eggs because there is a cuticle on the egg too, and therefore the eggs basically implodes. The structural integrity of the egg is not good. Therefore, you stop reproduction inside the colony within 10 to 20 days after initial ingestion of a bait. So usually this is where I take 3 hours to explain this process. I'm going to summarize it in 2 minutes because of sake of time. And really, this is all right now what you need to get. I can come back another time for that 3-hour session. Okay, foragers tend to be the old workers, are going out foraging, find a bait station, feed on it. It'll only take just a few days and less than 5% of the entire colony to have access to that bait to reach more than you need to kill every single termite. Then they're going to share the food through individuals to workers, soldiers, larvae, king and queen, which means that within 10 to 15 days, everybody has it. Then the first few workers, it's time for them to molt. You know, they're all doing it at a different time, but some of them, it's their time. They come back home, they die there, and they get cannibalized. Therefore, there's more product that were in them being spread further down just in case. Not that it's needed, but it's happening. Then the queen and larvae are further exposed to the bait. All the newly egged are unviable. Then all the larvae die within 30 days after initial baiting, feeding on a bait. The brood has completely collapsed because this larvae molt a bit faster. Instead of being every 45 days, it's about every 20 days to go to the next stage. And therefore, they're actually the first one to die. You actually kill the brood first when you bait a termite colony. Then the younger cohort of workers start dying within 45 days. And then you have very old workers that dies toward the end within 80 days. And eventually, by 90 days, soldiers and king and queen starve to death. And that's the end of it. That is the script that we've documented again and again with Coptotermis gastroi. Yes. It's even better than that because we're not using any biological entity here. What we use is a molecule that prevents them from producing a new skin. And it's only affect termites because no other insect that may be anywhere close to it is not going to be affected. So this is why it's kind of a beautiful system that we're tapping into their Achilles heel, but only termite because they're young individuals that keep molting forever. These baits don't work on ants. They're adults. They don't molt anymore. Therefore, it doesn't impact the ant colony. If it can't even feed on it in the first place, and if it could, it would not impact them. So this is why bait is such like almost surgical approach to eliminating a colony instead of broadcasting pesticide in the environment. Yes. Sorry. No, there's no resistance to pesticide in termites. So that's a very good question. And we don't really have to worry about resistance to a pesticide like we see in roach, in fleas, in a few others, bed bugs. They don't care about pyrethroids anymore. So yes, this is something that we have to take into account, but the baits currently in the market are doing a pretty good job, yes.
So this kills these
Yeah.
If you have other they start eating on these termites.
Excellent question. You need to put the bait where the termites are. So if you put in the ground, let's say, there's no drywood termite in the ground. They're only in that piece of wood up in the attic. So first of all, they will never reach it. And second, it's the metabolism of drywood termite is so slow that we believe they may be able to degrade the chemical before they get to the next molt. So we tried to use the baits for drywood termite, and it's not really cost effective. Actually, having a nice foaming of like imidacloprid or fipronil as a foam formulation to put it wherever they come out, wherever the frass is coming out, to foam the entire gallery because it's a closed system has been far more efficient for spot treatment than anything else. So for this, even if we can succeed in making baits work, it would take months before the colony is killed, where you can do it in 2 minutes with foam of liquid termiticide. There's no bait for dry wood termites. That's fumigation or spot treatment. And this is why knowing which termite you have is everything. Yes. So now two of the products, so we have Trelona and the Centricon, are durable baits. So you can put them in the ground and they can stay for up to 10 years at this point. And we believe more than that. Their formulation is fairly stable. The old formulation 20 years ago was not, and they finally fixed it up. In 2010, we had the HD bait for Centricon. In 2018, we had the ATBS for Trelona, and both of them can be directly implemented. And this is a job of a pest control to know how to place them around the structure and how many and more of that. Then I'm going to go to the above ground, which is going to be really critical for all of you very, very soon at the end of this talk.
So you said that it is
Yep. Yeah.
there's like a cat.
No, it's not going to impact. Again, they can't feed on it. The formulation is in the ground in a thing that needs to be chewed on. It's literally hard like this. So there's no insect that can do that except for subterranean termite. It is quite remarkable how targeted that it received the Ecological Medal of Honor in '96 by the president, saying that there's nothing like this, that is so small quantity, so targeted. It is truly surgical. Yes. Yeah.
I see these bait stations. Not enough soil coverage. Side
You need to core drill, and most companies don't want to do that. It's a hassle. Again, we're creating a problem for ourselves, putting all these concrete pavement, and there's nowhere to put the bait station.
Well, that I'm saying is,
And the soil is, well, the bait station goes deep
the
as that.
entire keys are not fortified.
The lime, yeah.
You learn a limestone, they find. That's what I've seen is working through tree project, part of it. That just really isn't, there's really very little natural soil. And there's just not enough
Yep.
soil.
And this is where I'll have a partial solution to that. There's another problem, but I didn't put it in there, but I'm telling you, the problem with Asian serpent termite, their sense seems to be very picky on the way they do their gallery in ground, which means it's going to be a hit and miss sometimes. With Formosans, we have no issue. If you put a station and there's Formosan anywhere, they will find it and hit it. Asian subs tend to be a bit more tricky. So while having this in-ground station is great, for Asian subs, we're gonna need the above ground station, which I'm about to talk about. And you'll see it's gonna be probably the most important tool for the decades to come for the whole industry and for the people in Key West. Now, the problem we talked about, that if you have a tree that is infested and you put the bait and you kill the colony, you save a tree, is that tree safe? No, you have no residual on that. So another colony can come reinfest anytime after. It could be tomorrow, it could be 10 years from now. So you can use potential liquid termiticide after killing a colony to create a barrier to protect the tree. It's been done. But the idea, if you put liquid termiticide around the structure, literally what's happening, all these colors are territories of foraging for a colony, let's say. This is what you do. You protect the house, but you have very little impact to the rest of the environment, to the rest of the termites in the environment. With baits, any colonies that intercept the bait and feed on it will be eliminated within 90 days to 100 days maximum. Nature hates vacuum. They're all competing for food resource in the environment. A new colony is going to move in readily. We're using the same galleries that the previous colony left. Remember this? If you go to the Atlantis, you have the leftover of the highways. Or no, this is imaginary. Rome, how about that? Rome, if you go back to Rome, you have all these antique streets and all of these things. So the previous civilization leaves the templates. So termite colonies leave the galleries behind that can be readily reused by neighborhood colonies and intercept the base station that, by the way, you have to keep in the ground. It's the law at this point. And this is why what you're paying the service for pest control provider is for them to service this station. If you stop paying, they'll take it away and you're on your own. That's how it works. And then eventually you create a somewhat termite-free environment in your area. It's true for native subs, it's native subterranean termite, it's true for Formosan subterranean termite. Unfortunately, partially true for Asian subterranean termite because, yes, sometimes they can't find the stations. And that is the problem, right? The good news is this is a case in Spain. They put all of these black dots you see in the city is a bait station in the ground. The city has not seen a single termite for 20 years. This is called area-wide management. The city has the money to plant a bait station every a single house in the Keys? I don't think so. That's not cost effective. But maybe at the neighborhood level, it's something that can be considered, assuming everybody agrees to it, of course. Yep. The paper is about to come out. I believe it was for per city, it's close to 15,000 bait station.
50,000 bait station. How big of a per mile?
Let's say it's in meters, so times 3-4 feet. I don't know. I only know my metrics.
Is this area the same size or smaller than?
No, it's a bit smaller than Key West.
So it's smaller than Key West than 15,000 bait.
Yeah. So, and the city is paying for it through tax levied to the population. Fact is, nobody had to pay for termite damage for the past 20 years. So the return on investment really paid up. I don't think this model works in the US because it's called socialism for some.
Residents and the number of homeowners sitting right here that are going like, I want to protect my house on that.
Mhm.
And here's an answer that could then a tax bill on the slide.
I fully agree with you. I wish we could do this in the US. There have been 2 area-wide management that has been tried in the US, one in Golden Beach, one in New Orleans. They failed because all it takes is one person to say, I don't want to be part, I don't want to pay for it. And it's all it takes. And there's always going to be one in the room. But this, as I told you, this is a people problem, not a scientific one. I'm a biologist. I cannot provide you an answer for that. Not yet, but the paper is about to come out from the study in Spain. They clear termites from 15 cities. It's insane. It is. So I think at the city level, it's not possible, but at the local community level for a small neighborhood, I think it's possible as long as everybody's on the same page. Unfortunately, it usually requires a single pest control company to monitor this because they need to check the stations at least once a year or up to 4 times a year, depending on the contract. So it takes manpower, it takes time, it comes with a cost. There's no free solution, by the way. And there's no DIY. Again, we go back to the DIY.
Once it's in the ground, why does it have to be?
Because if a termite colony came and feed on it completely, then that station could be found by another colony. But if there's nothing left to feed, then that station is useless. So they need to monitor it every year to make sure that it's still there, not fully consumed. If it's there, they put it back, leave it on, nothing to do. If it's been chewed up, great. You just killed a colony. You didn't even know about it. But now you put in one back in a base station in that sleeve that you put in the ground. So you can have continuous protection. That's the idea. Yep. Yes, which means if you find termites, you can put a dot on the map. Remember, haha! I've been trying with the Terminix, the Arcanes, the Hewlett, all of the big names. Like, hey, give me your data, and it's proprietary. I cannot have access to it. If you have your access, please, I would love. Anyway, this I'll take a picture. This summarize everything I said. Both of them are perfectly valid way to protect your house, but they're completely different. I tend to go for baits, but the problem with Asian subs that tend to not find the bait sometimes, it's your visibility now, certainly. So it's very, very different in the way of thinking. Now, you could use both. Now, a lot of companies are pushing for it with no data to say it's working or not. I'm currently doing it in my lab. But the idea now, what we have an understanding of the death zone, of that second, the repellency, as you put the liquid terminicide on the ground and any termite comings dies within 8 feet. We have a value now. It's 8 feet. Any termite anywhere close is dead, and therefore the galleries are cluttered with dead termites. And you know, if you go to, I don't know, Chick-fil-A and you open the door and everybody's puking on the floor and rolling in their agony of death, are you going to order? Okay, you just close the door and you go to Burger King next door, right? It's what termites do. They know that something is wrong because if you go there, it's all dead. So it's working and it keeps the termites away from the treated area. But again, the colony survives. So if you put a liquid terminicide, and let's pretend that we cut vertically here, but that plume of pesticide is actually completely surrounding the structure. If you have a termite colony back and forth being treated that way, and you decide to also put the base station for the long-term protection, if you put the base station within 8 to 10 feet from any pesticide treatment, then suddenly you put it in a death zone, and therefore that base station is never going to be found, at least for the first few years after treatment. So I'm okay using both, but you need to make sure to put this base station further away. The problem is the label says you can't. So now we have a regulation issue that we need to fix at the EPA level and at the state level. I told you, it's a people's problem, not a scientific one. So mhm.
Let's say they do that just inside, right at the foundation. Okay? And then you turn around and put the base station at the line of the roof. Let's say it's like 8 feet. So from that, that foundation, you're telling me that essentially it made that bait ineffective because that bait really pulled 14 feet away in order to.
Well, we know that it's at least 8. Further is good. The problem is now on the label, it says you're supposed to be putting by the drip line or anywhere close. You can also put this base station around trees. Usually when you have a root system that's split, it's a perfect place to put it right in between there. So yeah, the problem is if you have a death zone, you don't have these baits being hit. And what I've seen a few times now, and I know pest control have seen it too, you isolate the colony inside the structure. So you drill during a full infestation and you prevent the termites to come in from the outside, but you also prevent the termites to come out anymore. So I've seen a case where a colony was stuck inside the structure for 3 years. The company came in 3 years and was drilling in the walls where we could find them every time and put pesticide. To me, this is insanity at this point. Some companies still do this. I would argue that spot treatment for subterranean termite is no longer a reason to do this because if you have a mud tube, you can put an above ground bait station. I told you I was going to get to it. Any point? Okay, this is one of the version of the above ground baits. This is a Centricon version. The Trelona version from BASF, I was told, is coming up at the end of the year or early next year. So this is the exact same thing as we talked about, except instead of putting the bait in the ground and wait for the termites to find it, you serve it on a silver platter because you know where they are. You found that mud tube, right? And the idea is it comes in a packet. The version for the BASF Trelona will be a bit different, but same idea. You have a good stuff in there, and that termite love to chew on. You cut it with a knife, you put water and knead it into a paste. The reason is, I told you, subterranean termites love the moisture. And what happened is they're coming for the water and then stay for the food. Water is actually the magic ingredient. The analogy I love to use is, they're just like us. When you go into a bar, you come for a drink, you may stay for the food. Termites do the same thing. So when it gets into a paste, you place it exactly where the mud tube. So imagine you are on a house or on a tree, you have mud tube coming up, you create it, and then you stabilize it out of it. Tape, or I love to use the staple gun, clack on a tree, it's fantastic. It's very simple to establish. If it's on a tree, because trees are not flat, it's easy, it's flexible, and you can put the black one on top, so it's protected from the sun. So the termites don't like the sun, so you want to protect them. What I love to do, and this is for the industry, they all have their way to do it. They're all valid. The way I like to do it is only staple the top two, and therefore I can come back a day or two later, remove this one briefly, and double check if they're feeding on it. If they're not feeding on it because I did something stupid and they went away and they decided to not get into, I can take it off, make it wet again, and place it somewhere else. Yeah. On the mud tube, so you can like knock the mud tube, you see they're not happy, go there. On trees, when you have mud tubes, you have 100 positions where you can place it. This has been the #1 tool against Asian subterranean termites from West Palm Beach all the way down to the Keys. You see a mud tube, this is, as I said, you giving the food on a silver platter, and they will readily feed on it. Yes. You can't. You need to have an approved provider for Centricon or Trelona for that. And then the provider who is licensed, well, we have one in a room. Why are you in the room? How do you get wind of that meeting? I see, you have your hands. Yeah, so I don't play favorite. So just, that's true. So I don't play favorites. I train everybody. I train his company, I train Rent-A-Kill, I train the Hewlett, I train all the Kryptons, all the folks that are anywhere between West Palm to here. They often come to me for training. So I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. I don't play favorites. So good for you to be here. Yeah, so he's one of the few companies that provide the bait. So, huh? Technically, yeah. For one, it's good for one color. The more you put, the faster, well, instead of being 90 days, it's going to be 80 days. Oh, big deal. But more important is by putting multiple, you're really ensure that they actually feed on it. And it's all that matters. Their job as a pest control provider, the only job is to make sure that they feed on this, nothing else. If they feed, it's a win. If they don't feed, it's a lawsuit. As simple as that.
In his example, for termite trap, a lot of times they're going to be active.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a great spot to.
Yeah. Oh, how many times? You see the mud tube? Gone. Now the. Yeah, the problem I've seen for some companies, and these I will not recommend. I don't know if you guys still do it sometimes, because the homeowner is desperate because they never use bait on the mud tube. What they did to this is, oh, we still have termites. We're going to now fumigate because they're all trapped now, which means you use liquid termiticide, baits, and fumigation. It costs you $7,000. Well, I could have done the same job in 30 seconds with that for a smaller fee, let's say. This is where the insanity comes in, where I'm raising my voice as a scientist, as a biologist, that we can do better as a society. And patience, absolutely. Remember the script I gave you, that the moment they feed on it, you can sit and watch for 90 days, the colony goes to heaven. That's how it works. Oh, in 90 days, it's negligible. 6 months, a year, then that's a problem. And by the way, 90 days is a colony collapse. They stop feeding within 30 days. Like within 30 days, they're like, my belly is a little upset. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm going to hold on that piece of wood, and then they'll die. So usually, by the moment the feeding starts, you basically stop the wood consumption within 30 days. But this is for above ground bait station. For the in-ground, you don't know where they're going to hit. The thing is, you put them as protection for the long term. So you realize you may have had termites somewhere in your house or around your house, but by the time you realize it's been dead for a year potentially. So here the timing of colony collapse is not really relevant to the process. The key is you need to give them the food where they are. And that is where inspection of trees is going to become critical. Historically, we used to find a tree that is completely hollowed by the termites. We drill a hole and we inject the foam and you kill all the termites in the tree. That protects the tree for some time, which is not a bad thing. The problem is the colony is still alive. You only kill the termites right in the tree, not the rest of the colony that was treated on your house. If you cut the tree, then you remove the primary food source. Therefore, now they're going to your house. So please keep this in mind when you do something to your tree. Instead, we know where termites are. You just have to look. And if you have a keen eye, if you're aware of this, what to look for bismuth tubes or termite activity there, or have a nicely trained pest control provider who will be ready to take your dime away from that person to provide a fantastic service, then they can come and apply that bait on that tube or on that material. You can see this is actually a fence that is literally 3 feet away from the house. And there was no damage on the house yet. It was only in the tree because this is where they start. So if you catch the infestation early enough, when you find that tube, you put it within a few days, they chewed everything, you know, by then the colony is doomed. There's no way for it to come back. Now, this is where I'm going to wrap it up right on time. Yes? No, they're not. It's not going to attract the termites. It's just giving them food for free. It's a free buffet for them. I don't mind the wood chip. The thing is, I would not put it within a foot from the foundation. So you have visual inspection accessible to anyone who wants to look if there's a mud chip coming up. 2, if you have these, as you do your gardening maintenance and you like reshuffle the things, sometimes you find a termite, which is a great way to tell you where to put the bait station. So there's pros and cons to that, but ultimately it's up to homeowner to make the inspection process to a provider as easy as possible by not cluttering with termite food next to your house. Wood to ground contact is hell. You don't want wood to ground contact. You know these support beams for newly planted trees? I always go for these because when you look at the base, they're coming right there because now you give them access. So a few years ago, just like the city of Key West just called me, hey, we have a problem, help. The city of Fort Lauderdale did this in 2016, and they still have yet to pass a budget on it. So be patient, just as a warning. But the fantastic thing is they knew they were losing trees by the hundreds across the city, across the county at this point. And they said, please do something, help us. So it was at the time where one of the manufacturers is working on a new formulation of above ground, which is what we call the caulking bait. And it's not on the market yet. Maybe give it a couple of years. Yes, I know. And the idea is if you find a tree that's infested or a wall, you basically squeeze it where they are. You don't need the external bait. More important, this means that the bait is contained in the tree or the wall, which means nobody can mess with it. One of the big concerns is if you put this on a tree somewhere in a public area, somebody's going to tamper with it. This happens once in a while. But usually if you put City of Key West, don't mess with that, please. I mean, it can help. Although, I don't know, Duval Street is a crazy place. But the idea is this trick. You can place it in an area that is not accessible or not visible. So at the base of a tree, covered with dirt, or high enough that nobody can reach it. A ladder is a fantastic tool with that. It is the only tool really available. And with the one coming from Traluna, there's going to be 2 of them. And soon there's going to be 3 of them in this way where nobody can mess with it. It's in the tree. You give it to them where they are. They feed on it within a day. It's gone. It's quite remarkable. And again, mostly nothing else can feed on it. So we've been playing with this concept to make it as easy as possible, but this doesn't change the fact that inspection needs to happen first. You cannot use this if you don't know where the termites are. But unfortunately, you realize you have termites when you see them, which is, a double-edged sword here. The idea is they gave me access to 8, not 6, 8 parts, and this is a very old slide. We would double everything by then. All the dots is where we have termites in the parks, plus random people say, hey, I have a tree, I have termites, can you please include me in your pilot project so I don't have to pay for it? That works. I had a bunch of trees. This is a gumbo limbo in one of the city park. You can see the damage that happened at the base. This is not this tree, but the idea is they do damage there, they come inside, and the base is very quickly eaten. Gumbo limbo is a very fast growing tree. It's so soft and they can do a lot of damage very fast. We lost so many gumbo limbos because of that species here. And we treated it, and we did this for hundreds of trees. This is one of the nice city park that we have, a Riverland Preserve. I take my daughter there all the time. All the red dots in October 2019 were trees that were active for Asian serpent termite. We came with that bait, either the cocking one or the above ground. We put it wherever we could find termites. We come back in May, we clear the park from termites. That's it, we kill them all. We come back a year later, oh no, they're back. Because guess what? All the neighborhoods around that park are fully infested and the termites are gonna come back. Again, we lost the battle, but by then, we probably saved about 20 trees. What we did, we found them again. We put the bait again, and we come back 6 months later, we can't find any termites. We kill them all again. Functionally, what we just did here is playing whack-a-mole. We see them, bam, hammer it with your hammer. That is the hammer. See it again, bam. And as a society, we're gonna have to play whack-a-mole with that species forever. Hence the budget line on the city council, right? This was the first round. We treated 73 in that specific park, and we used 3.1 gram of active ingredients. If you don't know your metric, this is 3.1 gram. That's helped us killing a few million termites and save 27 trees. In comparison, if you use liquid termiticide, we're talking about hundreds of gallons, which is a whole different story. So we did the same thing with that park. You can see, so this is the same data I just show you, except now, last month, we went back after 3 years not doing anything. 3 years of letting alone, and guess what? So October 2019, we killed everything. We come back 6 months later, nothing's found. Come back a year later, again, we killed everything. October 21st, 2021, everything's done. We don't do anything for 3 years. We come back with survey, bam, they're back. I told you the concept of whack-a-mole. It's a very interesting one. We can talk about it all day. We're gonna have to hammer them, and this is where we did this for the city for free. But if they want to keep their trees, they're gonna have to start thinking about finding a solution for that. The circle that are empty are trees that are reinfested by a new colony. The black one is a new tree infested. The white dot is reinfestation by a new colony after the previous one was eliminated. So here we can document exactly what happened over a 5-year period. This project was partially funded by the FDAX, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. DAX, it's easier on the tongue. This is Horde Park. We had a bunch of infestation up, down, 4 up and 1 in the middle. We killed everything. We came back a bit later. We killed everything. We came back, and again, we're back again. And I did this for 8 parks. And this is last one, my favorite, Vailkeith Preserve. It's a beautiful park, mosquitoes though. But all these red dots, all infested with Coptoterminus gastroi. We treated them with a cocking, and we wiped them all out. The park was termite free, at least for what we could see. Think about all of these young colonies, 1, 2, 3-year-old that are so small, we cannot detect them. And this is what happened, because we can only kill what we see using this above ground. playing that whack-a-mole. Some of them going to be active again, and we can knock them down. And again, let's do nothing for 3 years and see what happened 3 years not doing anything. Ready for this? We're all gonna die. Okay, this was very sad. We just collected that data with Alvin, who's looking for termites right now. Um, um, we did the survey. We just finished the survey last week, actually. This data from last week. And we're sad because that park is getting hammered again and again. And we don't have a product anymore. We don't have a funding anymore. It's really going to be up to the city to step up because this is literally city properties. This is not private properties. If this was your house, it's your responsibility, right? If it's a city property, well, have fun. Now, I want to point out something very subtle, not so actually. So this is the park. This is the Bilkeef Preserve. Now let's zoom out a little bit. What's on the other side of this is Bilkeef Preserve. You see it? A beautiful park. You see the marina there? And it's started again. So basically, I can tell you a dozen of these trees are probably infested by now, if not the one brought it up in the first place. We lost. This is it. The thing is, I don't think I would call it the yachting industry as large, the leisure boats, any of these massive industry that makes South Florida unique is acutely aware of the problem. I don't think they truly sees the impact that termites have on their industry yet, but more important, the impact that their industry has on all of us by moving the termites. I mean, once they're here, it's over. It's everybody's problem, right? But I've been wanting to write a paper for the industry, for the boat industry in their whatever magazine they have on a monthly basis. I think it's time to raise the thing that they might bear part of a responsibility to this issue and do something because it will benefit them too, by the way, to protect their boats. It's fairly good investment on them. Because it's yeah, this is a reality. And ultimately, I would argue that for the industry at large, I'm not talking about the smaller one, which is a private entity like you, a small owner that do not have the deep pocket to do something about it. But the ones that are a bit bigger have much deeper pocket. And you can just throw money at it to solve the problem for now and not thinking about it. Maybe I'm very biased from the way I look at the industry, but the reality is I think it's such a small impact on the big industry at large that they may not look at it as something significant. Is once in a while, there's going to be a problem, solve the problem because we have the wealth to be able to solve that problem right now. For all the small homeowner, and I'm not talking about even this because these are marinas of multi-million-dollar boats just there. But if you go up in the canals, these are privately owned boats from people who have a property there and move their boats just in the canal. And these are smaller boats where people don't have the wealth to dump money at it. This is a massive investment like your case. And yes, I know many homeowners in that neighborhood specifically that told me they lost their boat due to the termites. Why nobody's doing about it? Nobody's doing anything about it. To me, it's a mystery because they don't see this as a community issue. This is literally everybody's somewhat impacted one way or another. It's a people's problem again. I think I've said that a few times. From a biological perspective, we know how to take care of it, but large scale, the scale of it is making it possible to solve. There's no solution to it. Again, minimizing the impact by killing the termites when you find them, stopping them from making more colonies, is kind of helping alleviate the burden to us, basically. It's part of making it livable, right? No, they go for any trees. We found them in mahogany, palm, bischoffias, name it. They don't care. Yeah. Now, if we would have done the same thing with liquid termiticide, we would have used 850 gallons instead of 10.9 grams. And just so that you know, we did the environmental impact. Baits are 25,000-fold less impactful on the environment than liquid termiticide as a whole. Yeah. They invite me every year. That community I just talked about by Bill Keith Preserve. Mm.
That's part of these termites. It also is it pest control or arborist issue.
Both.
The arborist, there seems to be no synergy between
And
these two.
that is part of a tragedy because it's a termite. It's called wood destroying organism. It's WDO, which by regulation in the state of Florida, you need to be certified and only pest control are certified. Arborists are not. So if arborists are handling a problem, they have no solution. They need to talk to a pest control provider, and the provider needs to be also discussing with the arborist and the community as a whole that all the trees are now at risk. And cutting the tree is not only the problem that, oh, there's termite, therefore we need to cut the tree just in case the damage is so bad that now it's a risk to fall on the house because of a liability issue I was mentioning earlier, I think, that because just in case we're going to cut it, which to me is insane. We need to maintain the tree canopy. Therefore, we need to find the colony as early as possible and save the tree. And this is for me the poster child. This is a gumbo limbo that we detected in 2019 that Alvin, you can see here, is injecting the bait directly where the colony is inside because we had access to it. That tree in 2014 is still standing. We know we saved that tree. We know for a fact. So the matter is the timing of detecting it and treating it can save most of the urban canopy if the job is done at the community level. They work. No, they're identical because it's the same ingredients and pretty much the same metrics. So it's the same to me. It's just that sometimes you don't have a mud tube and the caulking is easier. Sometimes it's the opposite. You don't have anywhere to put it, and the patch is going to be much more easier to apply. Yeah, they're going to be complementary in the way you use them. Hopefully, when it's on the market. So this is just a scoop. It's coming hopefully soon, unless the EPA screw up. Unless the EPA screw up during the regulation process. Okay, it never happens, right? I'm still on record. Okay, so tree inspection is, as I said, 50% of the job. Inspect the tree, confirm identification, then have a pest control provider come and put a bait station on that tree and potentially put the in-ground program around. By label, if they put the bait station on a tree, technically they have to charge you like they're putting the protection around. This is how they're making money, because if you call them to put this, they're not making a living. Let's be real. And your house is still at risk and the other trees are still at risk. Putting these in the ground is ultimately the more sustainable way to do it, and they'll be happy to charge you. It's a service. If you live in Florida now, South Florida, yeah, cable is no longer a service. Internet, phone, cell phone, water, electricity, termite. This is part of your monthly bill that you can think of. Termite is now one of these. I would argue, especially in heavily infested neighborhood. This is the problem. As I told you at the very beginning of this talk, we don't have an easy solution. It's a complex problem, moving target, but we're just catching it. This has been a slow motion trend happening for decades. And because of this slow motion aspect, there is absolutely no sense of urgency on, oh, we need to do something about it now. We should have done something about it 5, 10, 15 years ago. But because we tend to react instead of preemptively strike in this situation, by the time we realize it's already everywhere on the islands, all the way up the chain. And now we just have to mitigate the potential damage so we can learn to live with these guys. They are part of our lives, you want it or not. So yeah, this is my take-home message: inspection and early detection. This is where arborists need to be trained. Pest controls need to be properly trained. Some of them already do it. Homeowners who are aware of the issue can do it themselves. The inspection, you look at your trees every day. You're the one who should be able to see that mud tube coming up. Do you see the mud tube here, right? On the tree, it's there. The use of above ground station can be a solution only for remedial. What I mean by remedial, above ground cannot be used as a prevention. You cannot use this. You have to find termites to use. The in-ground based station, we didn't bring any in-ground, right? Forgot about it. Because this is most important right now. But the in-ground are still very important to basically have them to intercept when they forage. But if you see activity, then these above ground station are a fantastic tool as a remedial solution, curative solution. If it does reduce the use of pesticide by 25,000-fold, it prevents structural damage by eliminating the colony early. Again, if you find it in a tree before they're in the house and kill a colony, you just protected your house at the same time. I've seen a case where they had a tree infestation, they didn't do anything, they cut the tree down, 6 months later, massive damage in the house, because guess what? You remove the primary food source. So we want to keep these trees, and we want to save them, and we want to protect our structures anyway. Save a tree. We're the good guys, right? We want to be the good guys. And reduce the overall termite pressure in area. Does not suppress it completely, but reduce it to make it livable. So yes, I strongly believe that baits are a big part of the solution. Liquid termiticides still have a place, but everything is going to have to be a case-by-case basis. Each company, providers do it a bit differently. They all have different philosophy. They all have different trainings. Some of them came to my class, some of them didn't. So we can talk about this extensively. Okay, I'm sorry I went a bit long, but I think I gave you all to start the conversation within your communities. My pleasure.